All right, so let's dive right in. Let's talk about the first type of account. These are high yield savings accounts, and most people have heard of them, but you may be out there saying, man, okay, is this significant? Does this even matter? I mean, so what if I'm making money on my cash? And while it may not seem significant in the short term, when you actually stretch out your timeline, it can be pretty significant. If you think about an emergency fund that has $20,000 in there, if you can get that $20,000 parked in a high yield account with a 5% yield, paying you 5% for holding that, after about 1 month, that $20,000 will have made about $83. Okay, that's fine. That's like a nice dinner out, maybe a tank of gas, but it's not life changing. So it doesn't get you too exciting. But when you expand your timeline, you think about after that money's been sitting there for 2 years, that $20,000, it was just going to sit there anyways, has made you almost $2,100.
Yeah, this is one of those things. You guys hear me say it all the time. Big results come from small decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always ask whether it's the books and other things, we always say, what small decision are you making today to build your great, big, beautiful tomorrow? Guys, this is a perfect example of something that looks like it is a teeny tiny decision of just getting a little bit of extra on your cash reserves. But I'm telling you, this is the type of mindset that is going to set you apart and turn you into a financial mutant.
All right, Brian, so let's talk about the different types of cash accounts, because not all cash accounts are created equal. They behave differently. They have different benefits. We want you to know which one makes the most sense for where you are and what problems you're looking to solve. Now, we've already mentioned the first one, high yield savings accounts. This is the one that I think most people are most familiar with and most people will be able to relate to in the most ready manner.
Well, this is the easiest because it's your banks, it's your credit unions. Now, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed, if you're looking at who's going to pay you the most money, I think the traditional banks, what we call the brick and mortar, meaning the banks that are right down the street from you, they are not usually on the cutting edge of paying you the most. If you want to maximize the high yield savings account, more than likely you're going to have to look at that credit union or even that online bank.
Another thing that you want to know is that when you have a high yield savings account offered by a bank or credit union, they are protected by federal programs, either the FDIC or the NCUA for credit unions, that will ensure your deposits up to certain limits. So you can rest assured that that money that you're putting there in an emergency will actually be there for you up to certain limits, because there are federal protections in place to make sure that those entities stay solvent.
Yeah, what we like about high yield savings accounts, if you talk about cash and reserves, this is supposed to be money you can get to easily. Yep. It has a high liquidity. So if this is the case, there's not going to be anything any easier. Now realize you should pay attention when you set these accounts up. Even though I don't want you pulling money in and out of these too much, you do need to ask yourself, how many transactions are they going to allow me before they start charging me fees for this high yield savings account?
Or even if you're moving money back and forth between accounts, there may be a 1 to 3 day hold moving it from a high yield savings account to your checking account. So you just want to know that going into there. Obviously, if they're the same institution, it may be a little bit quicker, but if there is a lag time, if there's a delay, you want to make sure that you're aware of that. Another thing that's interesting about high yield savings accounts is how quickly the rates adjust, because we know that all of these cash paying accounts have a stated rate that they're going to pay you, but that rate often is not locked in time. So you want to know that as interest rates change, as federal policy changes, how does that affect the money that you're earning on your cash? Well, when it comes to high yield savings accounts, their rate adjustment speed we would rate as moderate.
Yeah, and well, this is why this is important. Is I think about, remember how I told you guys that we went through decades where interest rates just dragged in the cellar. If you look at, we have a chart that we created where you can see the Fed funds rate was pretty much as close
almost
to zero as you can get. About the only way you could make money is if you were using a high yield savings account. Because if you look at it, we use it as an example. We used Ally. I was able to go pull all my own account statements to get some rates. You can see all the way up until really April or May of 2022, the only game in town, if you were just trying to maximize your yield, was to go to one of these high yield savings accounts. Now, as the Fed has raised rates and Treasury, T-bills and other things have gone up, these have gone up as well, but they have kind of capped them out. It's not always the best game in town anymore.
So you can see that they do move with the rates, but it's not necessarily a perfectly tied movement, and it's not incredibly rapid. We would say that it's moderate. Now, the other big benefit to high yield savings accounts is when it comes to setting them up, like how do I go open one? How do I navigate that? They're very, very easy to set up. And if you're using the online version of a high yield savings account, many of those can be opened up in 5 or 10 minutes, and you can actually link them to your checking account. So there should not be a big barrier to entry. So if you literally have your savings account just sitting at a brick and mortar institution and you're not getting top tier rates, that's kind of on you, because it should not be difficult for you to access and be able to use a high yield savings account.
So let's talk about the perks and the pitfalls of these high yield savings accounts. And I think to kind of kick off the perk is that, I do love that these, if you choose the right institution, you get a great rate of return. So I want to echo what you just said, is make sure you're proactive. If you have a brick and mortar and they're not paying you a good return, pay attention, and hopefully you can learn something on today's show to change that and actually start making the most out of your cash.
Yeah, so when we think about the perks, one of the perks is that high yield savings accounts, depending on the one that you use, they might have unique savings buckets. So even when it comes to your personal budgeting process, you may be able to have a hold for the next car down payment or HVAC replacement or vacation budget. You can actually chunk them into different buckets that will help you with your mental accounting, all the while all of those dollars are still earning that same high rate of interest.
I also like when you set up some of these accounts, I want you to go do a little research into, are there any like incentives or bonuses you might qualify for setting up an account? I think about, I already covered Ally. They've paid me $500 for making contributions and other things. Capital One's another one. Now I put an asterisk next to Capital One because it is a perk that they offer this, but I don't mind sharing that they fall under the pitfall category as well. I'll come back to that, and the fact that here's the pitfall for high yield savings accounts. Currently, they are not the best. As we shared with you that before 2022, this was the only game in town, but as interest rates have gone up, as the federal policy and the central banks have pushed rates up, they pay good rates, but it's not the best rates.
Right.
So that's kind of a pitfall, but that doesn't mean it will always stay that way. The other pitfall is exactly what I was talking about. I call it the bait and switch game. You've fallen prey to this.
You've literally been a victim.
I have fallen prey to this. Banks, I'll just go ahead and say it because I've been a customer. I've even told them on their 1-800 number that they're making a mistake here, is that they will, and they don't even change the name of the bank, but Capital One will keep renaming their high yield savings accounts. And if you're a new account holder, you get the best rate. But if you have an existing account, they might all of a sudden slowly start not paying you the best rate. That's less than ideal, because you shouldn't have to go change to their better product to get the best rate of return or the best yield. And Bo, you've fallen trapped to this with by
Dollar
going on.
Savings Direct was the one that I fell prey to. I think it's a branch of Immigrant Direct, and I only did it because I wanted to beat you. I only went and chose the savings account because I think it was like 10 basis points, 20 basis points more than you were getting. I signed up for the account, moved all my cash over, and literally 3 months later, they slashed rates. And all I had done was just moved money for no real reason.
So when you go to bankrate.com and you go to see who the best high yield savings accounts are being paid for, do a little additional research to make sure that they consistently are the highest yielding, not just a brand that is using you to attract new capital and then slowly going to downplay those rates of returns and actually hurt you and make you move your money.